Welcome to Art Toronto. My name is Mia Nielsen. I'm the director of the show, and today we have a really special talk that is presented by AXA XL. This is how social media has changed art and culture. It features art consultant Anita Cirillo, who's based in Vancouver. We have artist Alex McLeod, Dara Vandor from Waddington's auction house, and the conversation is moderated by Farah Al-Lahiq from AXA. Enjoy.
Hello, and welcome to a conversation on how social media has changed art culture. My name is Farah Al-Lahiq, and I work at AXA XL, and I work within a team of experts and underwriters to advise and support the world's largest institutions and professional art dealers, as well as private and corporate collectors, by providing risk management and insurance solutions entirely dedicated to the protection of fine art and collectibles. Joining me today are three amazing panelists: Anita Cirillo, who is an art dealer and art consultant at Gallery Jones Fine Art, located in Vancouver, British Columbia. Anita has a decade of experience in the industry and has participated in many art fairs around the world, working with both national and international clients to help them build their private and corporate collections. Whether it be working with experienced or new collections, Anita's passion lies in educating and inspiring the next generation of collectors to get them excited about supporting artists and building a meaningful and diverse collection. She is also very involved in the art community, sitting on a number of charity auction committees in Vancouver and Toronto. Anita holds a BA in Visual Culture and Performance Studies from Simon Fraser University. Also joining me is artist Alex McLeod. Alex is a Toronto-based visual artist who creates work about interconnection, life cycles, and empathy through the computer as medium. Prints, animations, and sculptures function as gateways into alternative dimensions, oscillating between the real and the imagined. Alex has had solo shows across Canada, Vancouver, Toronto, as well as New York, Barcelona, and San Jose. Alex has also worked on commissions and collections with the Whitney Museum in New York, RBC, TD, and the Fairmont Group. Also joining us is Dara Vandor, coordinating social media, marketing, and communications for Waddington auctioneers and appraisers. Dara keeps a close eye on the art market. From content creation to online marketing, Dara supports the Waddington's team in bringing over 100 diverse online auctions annually to their global audiences. Waddington's is Canada's oldest auction house and help clients buy, sell, and appraise their fine art and decorative art, jewelry and watches, wine and spirits, and more. With over 10 years experience, Dara has worked in communications, social media, and marketing in the arts, fashion, film, technology, and healthcare sectors with a focus on strengthening engagement and community. She has collaborated with a range of organizations, freelancers, and startups to create and execute compelling strategies. Dara holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in art history from McGill University. All right. So to begin today's discussion, I wanted to read off a few things that have come out in the Global Art Market Report discussing 2020, and also that's been duplicated in many other publications since then in the last couple months. So in 2020, online art sales doubled in value from 2019 to reach a record high of over $12.4 billion US. Social media continued to be a key channel used by the art market to reach a new audience and generate sales. Roughly 1/3 of collectors purchased art via Instagram last year. These collectors, in most instances, never saw the art in person. They purchased almost as many items in 2020 as they had in 2019. The Art Market Report highlighted that for the first time, the share of e-commerce in the art market exceeded that of general retail, and from what some publications have reported, could revolutionize the way art dealers and auction houses do business. So I'm going to kick off the conversation with asking, I guess, the obvious question: how has social media affected your business compared to, say, 5 years ago? And Dara, I'm going to ask you.
All right. I think the obvious answer is, larger access, broader reach, right? We're able to touch, audiences that we weren't able to reach before. So I think that's the obvious answer. But what I think, the more interesting answer is that it's sort of introduced a lightness, a sort of element of play, I think, to the art world that we didn't have 5-10 years ago. You know, we weren't talking about how to make something fun. You know, when's the last time you heard a dealer or an artist be like, I got to make this fun, you know? So I think that's what's really changed in the business. We're all interacting in ways that are, I think, a bit lighter, a bit more scope, a bit broader. And I think that's really interesting.
Anita?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a lightness and a playfulness to the industry now that wasn't there before. I mean, with that said, there's also another aspect in which now artists are so accessible to the collector, whereas before the collector had to go through the gallery, and that has completely changed our business model and how we have to interact with clients and collectors and make sure that we're, you know, hopefully still the go-through point in which they are to build their collections. So we've really had to shift how we think about getting work out there and working with social media to benefit us rather than to hinder our, you know, our business. And sometimes it does great things, and sometimes, you know, it can kind of work against us.
So I mean, you say it does great things and sometimes it might work against you. How would you say it's worked against you? Or what do you see as the negative sides?
Well, as I said, I think there's, you know, this accessibility now to the artist, and coming from a purist mind on the gallery side of things, we want there to be a gallery experience. We want collectors to come to the gallery to, you know, we pull artwork out. There's a whole kind of song and dance that takes place in buying art or collecting or acquiring, and now there is this immediate, you know, accessibility to artists that they can go directly to them, and that works against us sometimes, in that we want to make sure that there is still some traditional gallery model that is going to continue on.
Alex, do you have any comments?
I feel like it, to me, it's like it adds another avenue or another stream to access art enthusiasts. So I might sell like smaller prints that have a larger edition that wouldn't be suitable for a gallery to carry. But if I sold them through Instagram or through my website or whatever, there's suddenly all these folks that may just be getting interested in art. They may not feel comfortable spending $2,000, $20,000 on a piece of art, you know, but you need to get them hooked somehow. So for me, it's just like, okay, like lower priced works are a great avenue for that. And even if their next place isn't to go to the gallery and they're just like satisfied with that, that's amazing, because now they're living with art that's original. But a lot of other folks might be like, okay, cool, now that I've got a taste of this, now I need something bigger. I need, you know, something next. And then that's when they would go to the gallery, I think.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it does remove the intimidation factor sometimes that gets associated with coming to a gallery, or, you know, new collectors who are interested in art. They find it extremely sometimes intimidating to walk into this big white space and there's like some girl sitting at a desk with her head down does the like little eye raise. So yeah, I think Instagram has like totally broken down that barrier in a way to make it more accessible. So that is the bonus there, the positive side to it for sure. Yeah.
I think there's also a new transparency, I think, that social media and the internet has brought to the art world. You know, I was listening to an artsy webinar, and they were talking about how now the majority of sales are done with items where the price is listed. You know, and that's something that the auction business has had for a long time, right? This sort of, you know what you're buying and how much you're buying. And so you don't feel uncomfortable, you know, I want to buy something for $200 and someone's like, actually it's 20,000, you know? So this new transparency and being able to access auction records, you know, the artist might be posting on their website how much they're selling their work for. I think it's wonderful. I think that's really an important entry point to collectors.
And so my question then, if there's this accessibility, which is, I think, is a positive thing, I can completely identify with going into a gallery or an auction house for that matter and being very intimidating and not so knowledgeable. How does that affect your relationship with collectors and or the artists you represent? If there's this sort of backdoor approach, or has that always existed without social media? And so, you know, artists were always able to sort of sell their works privately in addition to being represented by a gallery. Have you had to sort of pivot the way in which you set up contracts around artists, or the way that things are sold through artists, whether it's through the gallery or the artist? Has any of that changed?
I mean, I think, yeah, there's always been, even pre-internet or social media, artists have always, you know, there's always been the risk of artists selling out of their studios. And I think it's more important than ever to really make sure there's a solid relationship and this openness and communication between the galleries and the artists. That's like the number one thing. You know, I try to bug our artists as much as possible to sort of keep us in the loop and we keep them in the loop, and maintaining a really solid, openness is, I think, the number one thing.
So my question is there's a certain, yes, there's transparency, and it's definitely sort of opened up the art world to new collectors and collectors that are perhaps not so new. Does it affect the fact that there is sort of a level of instant gratification on social media? I mean, I can talk about sort of the advertisements that you see all the time for everything from household stuff to art to fashion. And in the moment, you're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I want it. Without necessarily doing research about, in this case, the artist or the artist's work. Or do you foresee down the road, given the fact that there's such a huge uptake in online buying, particularly with Instagram, sight unseen, that what happens to the next generation of collectors and how that translates to the secondary market, where there's no relationship necessarily with the artist, it's sort of a click buy now, and children of or families have these works that, you know, it was perhaps an impulse purchase by. How does that trickle down to the galleries and or the auction houses on the secondary market? How does that change? How is that different to sort of the traditional model where they're buying from a gallery? They have a relationship with the gallery, they have a relationship with the auction house, they know the artist, etc.
It's a big question. I mean, I think that in any generation, and I'm borrowing this quote, but you know, if you buy a young artist or a living artist, it's always like buying a lottery ticket, right? Like you're buying because you love something, and I think that's very important. You know, to buy strictly for investment's sake is a gamble, right? I think if you want to, you know, buy something that is going to stand the test of time, you know, not to plug what I do, but that's when you buy at auction. You buy, you know, like a group of 7 or something that has stood the generations, the test of time. But I think, you know, in the Instagram market, I think we also have created a generation of artists who are incredibly savvy in creating, you know, the right pedigree for their work, in editioning it, in signing it, in creating a, you know, a sort of chain of ownership, right? That's where NFTs and blockchain come in. You know, we are future-proofing ourselves in a way which is actually very interesting.
I also think, though, that there's like the internet or social media hasn't been around long enough to really know how this is going to play out in like 10 to 15 years with the secondary market, with living artists, because if people are buying directly from an artist off Instagram and that artist doesn't necessarily have a gallery representing them, I think there's going to be a lot of areas to navigate through with selling those pieces that were purchased off Instagram. And that's where I feel galleries are extremely important, because we provide some validity to that secondary market to say, hey, you bought this piece from us, we can help you, you know, 10, 15 years down the road, maybe 20, who knows, to resell it. And that's where I think we're going to find it interesting, and how Instagram is going to play in a number of years.
Alex, do you have anything?
Oh, that's an interesting point. I mean, I think artists are unique in this way because you said this like relationship with the artist, but it's like the only world where that can happen. Like people buy and sell, it's just like collector vinyls, they antiques, they sell anything without having a relationship with the individual. And authentication sometimes isn't as important as just having this object. So I feel like it could go either way. I mean, I think what's cool about the art world is that it is still so unregulated in the Wild West, and I feel like it'll continue to be regardless.
Have you seen sort of like what works for you guys on social media? Has there been a stronger push, not just as an artist for you, Alex, but for Waddington's, for Gallery Jones, to really pivot to offering things online that you haven't maybe done 5 years ago? And how have you done that? What's worked, what hasn't worked, or are you sort of learning as you're going? It sounds like it's sort of a lot of unknowns right now.
I could start if you want. I think what's interesting actually is I think Waddington saw the shift many years before COVID. I mean, we sort of talk about COVID like it was the thing that brought everyone online in the art world, and we've been doing online auctions for a long time, a really long time. So this wasn't a pivot for us, like this sort of new art online moment. What we've been doing is creating as much transparency as possible to accommodate for this new, as you said in your introduction, this rise of online buying when people haven't seen the work. So, we understand that people want to bid from their cottage, from their couch, from around the world, right? So, how can we provide more photos, more information, more access to experts, so that you are able to buy with such certainty, right? That's what we're invested in right now.
I don't think COVID was necessarily the pivoting point for us either. We'd always been doing a fair bit of business through Instagram, collectors who see things and we post. I think where we are always trying to figure it out is sort of the like perfect formula for, what posting what catches people's attention. So the amazing thing is that we can put up pieces that haven't been put on a wall or been part of a show in, a decade, and they get to sort of have this like resurgence in visual power on Instagram again. And so that's really nice and exciting because we have this amazing stacks at the gallery full of all this great art, and we don't necessarily always get to show it. So that has been a really good tool for Instagram. But yeah, I think we're always trying to figure out exactly what the right formula is.
No, that's a really good point. Sort of bringing, a new audience to some of these artists that you've had on your roster for many years, or just haven't had the same, or getting new attention. What I think is interesting though, because I've read some things about Instagram and how sort of the whole e-commerce thing works on Instagram, and apparently likes and number of followers do not equate to sales. So I'm wondering when you're, is there a methodology that you use to be able to get traction that leads to a sale or leads to a new collector client, or do you have things that you will do in order to try and facilitate a sale online? Is there specific things?
I think one of our biggest thing has been engagement with the community. Like, so we're having shows, or an artist is participating in something, or has been acquired by a collection. We do what we can to get the community engaged with that, and we found that tends to be we've had more success with that. I think that kind of grabs people's attention, and they end up kind of going down a bit of a rabbit hole and finding, learning more about the artist or about what it is that they're involved in or that the gallery is showing. And then sometimes that can kind of tend to greater conversations and potentially a sale. But it's more about sales are great, but engagement, I think, is what we really value.
how much do you pay attention to number of followers of a particular artist, for example, in terms of what people are really looking to buy or what's fashionable? Do you pay much attention to that when you see a really hot artist that perhaps if you hadn't known about them, you wouldn't necessarily carry in your gallery or sell them at an auction, or Alex, what you create would have any influence on that? Are you affected much by sort of what's generating a lot of traffic in terms of an artist's style?
I think we have to be so careful. I'm going to step outside of my professional role for a second. I think we have to be so careful in the art world about conflating likes with quality or something interesting, or,
Yeah.
you know, I think that there's this sort of dopamine drip on social media, and we've created this generation of artists who create for the fans, they create for the algorithm, they create for the likes. And I think that's really, really dangerous. I think it's also created a sort of international Instagram aesthetic. You know, people are making kind of, art is becoming more and more homogenous. And I think that's really dangerous to do things for the likes. You know, we have to be very careful.
And you never know what people are gonna like too. Also, like for me, it's like at one point I was like, okay, I was being mindful of like what would get likes and when I'd post and to be strategic about it. And then I was like, you know what? Like I'm trying all this and I still have no idea what people are gonna like, when they're gonna like it too. Like I might post an animation that's really weird. And if I post it at lunchtime, people might dismiss it. But if I post it, you know, it's like at midnight or something, people are like, whoa, this is amazing, because maybe they're ready for it. It's just like programming network TV. You're not gonna have like Twin Peaks at 9 a.m. So I was like, all right, whatever. I don't know when this is gonna get served to anybody, so I'll just post whenever and hope for the best. Because yeah, I totally agree with you. Because trying to fit within this like nebulous form that is Instagram like inducing is kind of like a bad road. Yeah, it's not long term.
And I think that sort of just goes along with my previous comment about, you know, and to further what is sort of Anita's take on it, was that we just don't know what the influx is going to be on the secondary market with this instant gratification. If people are buying based on what's popular, sight unseen, without necessarily any education around what or who they're buying. I think that's really interesting. How has the change in a lot more uptake in people looking online at artists affected your personal relationships or your relationships with collectors? Do you have collectors coming into the gallery or auction house that will sort of pull up something on their phone and say, has it created a better dialogue? Has it created a worse dialogue?
Yeah, I mean, I think more information is power sometimes. Like, you know, collectors will come in and say, hey, I saw this on Instagram. I mean, sometimes if it's like not in our realm whatsoever, it's like, yeah, we don't have that. But people are looking and they're engaging with things. So we try to just do our best and run with providing, you know, sourcing or finding things that collectors are looking for. But it is like, it sometimes can be a bit tricky because people see so much imagery in a day on Instagram that even sometimes they can't even remember what they saw. And they're like, I saw this thing, and they're trying to explain it. And it can be a little bit of a roadblock sometimes. But I think it's, you know, we're trying to navigate around how to continue providing, you know, the best service we can with that.
I think what's interesting is we're living in this moment where I don't think we've ever lived in a moment where more people have a higher degree of visual literacy, right? I think everyone is so visually literate, and that is the gift of social media, the gift of the internet, right? You can talk intelligently about something you haven't seen because you've seen it in high res, you've followed the artist, you've read the auction records, right? And I think that's an amazing thing, right? So when someone comes in and has that degree of knowledge, whether it's, you know, the gallery or, you know, direct to consumer or the auction house, I think it's a wonderful thing.
So I'm wondering if you've seen what you've seen in the marketplace with galleries or auction house or artists. What would you say people do well that are succeeding in using social media to their advantage? Whether it's an artist generating sales, generating followers, or new collectors that are interested in their collection, or getting people to come to a gallery or be interested in the sale the auction house is having. what do you see as being people are doing really well to create that kind of engagement?
I can jump in. I think back to my previous point. I think it's a degree of novelty, a degree of freshness, access, fun. You know, I think you're competing with cat videos, right? And you know, so you've got to really make sure that you're grabbing attention quickly, right? Like, you know, just posting something, a picture of something on a wall might not always cut it, right? So how do you share a story? Or, you know, I always call it cocktail chat, right? Like, you know, if you're sitting down with a good friend and, you know, you pour yourself a drink and you're like, guess what I found out, right? And that's what I think is going to keep people coming back and keep people wanting to hang something on their wall. They want to feel the story, the connection.
Absolutely, yeah. To get like a full 360 view of the person or the gallery or whatever that they're buying into is super important, because before it was just all mysterious. Like a gallery website would have like 10 artists and 10 works, and that was it. And you just have to kind of like guess that what your interests and their interests kind of coincide. But now you can go and follow any of those artists. You can see what they had for lunch, see who their friends are, see what kind of peer network they have, and how they're engaging in this world. And I think that's super valuable for a lot of folks to build like a full picture of who they're investing in.
Less lunch though.
Yeah.
I'd love it if there was less. I find there's a flip side, right? I find that some people can really overexpose themselves, and you can start to really dislike them because you're like, oh, this person, I love their work, but they're driving me nuts with the salad pictures.
No,
you know?
It's true. And I think that's good too, because somebody who might be like, you might be seduced by like, and I felt like it's a hard line to walk too, because like you want to show your success and you want to be like proud of your achievements. But if I'm on a boat every single day, then people are gonna start getting resentful for me. So it is really interesting. You know, I feel that. Yeah, it's hard. One boat video like a year, I think is fine.
It does go back to that, you know, finding the right formula, right? Then finding just the right amount, because over posting is just as bad as never posting. So it's like finding this weird in between of life and you know, personal life and career, and yeah, like it's, you know, the gallery, we try to show the fun, lighted, hard, you know, fun side of us 4 employees that work at Gallery Jones, but then on the other side we also want to keep it professional and slick and clean. And yeah, it's so funny how some people tend to do it really well, and they will be doing it really well, and then all of a sudden it sort of takes a turn and they're over posting, and maybe your opinion changes. So yeah, but find that happy medium.
There's a lot of recalibration too, right? Like, you know, I'm sure you all feel this. You know, you think you've got something going. Maybe the boat photos are working for you, and all of a sudden the boat photos are not working for you, or the algorithms change. Like, that's something that we think about a lot, right? Like, you know, you could be doing something, and all of a sudden Reels is here, and you're like, what, Reels? I've got to figure out Reels now. You know, so I think it's just keeping very nimble. I think that's the secret.
Amen, for sure.
Do you get surprised sometimes when you post things and the kinds of reactions you get?
All the time.
It's changing, right? I'm just wondering, sort of looking into the future, where do you foresee, how do you see the traditional roles of people that work at auction houses and galleries and artists changing, if they haven't already, compared to traditional roles as of years gone by?
I kind of like to see myself specifically, but also Gallery Jones sort of playing in both, being able to play in both fields, like be this, you know, keep with tradition and have a sort of the, you know, purist gallery form of white walls, and we have an exhibition space, but then also being able to be like Play-Doh and play in the social media realm. And I think whether you are just in the social media realm, maybe you got to figure out how to be a little bit more of a purist. Like, I think we're going to see this shift maybe back to that form. Like, it, you know, people are like getting sick of their cell phones and they put them away for 6 months, and it's like, oh, I'm just going to live, you know, free and open and whatever. And maybe that's kind of to be said about the art world as well, that people might need a break, and it might kind of shift back to the gallery platform versus social media, but I think it's super important that you need to be malleable in both and have a foot in both worlds.
Do you ever see it strictly becoming like sort of an e-commerce thing where?
Sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, I was just wondering if you see the gallery model, for example, or even the auction house model, and of course yourself, Alex, if you aren't already, is just moving strictly to an e-commerce format and have smaller gallery spaces. I'm just thinking, you know, cut down on rent costs, etc., and maybe move to maybe it's more of a pop-up model, for example, or a showroom sort of thing. Do you see that going on in the future? Do you think that will change?
I feel like that's way more equitable too. And if the way things are going doesn't change, maybe there's an additional model or additional models that happen in the future. Whereas maybe an artist has fundraising campaigns before their exhibition happens that's crowdfunded, because like mounting an exhibition of like 10 or 12 works that haven't been sold and you're just hoping that they sell and you spending all this money on it is like super inequitable, right? So a lot of folks can't participate in this art world because of that. So if we could break down some of these barriers, whether it's like a pre-sale situation or a sponsorship situation with maybe like a pop-up gallery or a place that makes sense for the context of the work, I think we could have a lot more artists and a lot more happy artists, you know, that aren't in debt artists because of this, you know, because this platform is afforded to us.
I mean, we're in a very different position, you know, than Anita or Alex, right? Like we do such a large volume business. We need to have the bricks and mortar. Things need to come in and be inspected and be photographed. And, you know, we need the specialists to look at them. Like what you're buying is that, you know, the confidence, right? The confidence that someone who knows exactly what they're doing has looked at this under a black light and has, you know, measured it and done the research. Like, so we will always need the physical space, right? Like our spaces are massive because we're storing so much work and we're you know, moving a lot of product, and you know, people will always, I think, want to come in and buy look at something before they buy it. So while a lot is done online, we will always have the bricks and mortar.
Yeah, and there's more galleries are moving away from the bricks and mortar, for sure. It's definitely, e-commerce is making that much easier for them to do. You know, there's this sort of cool slickness about it too, you know, these pop-up locations that take place in leased or temporary locations. Like, I think that's really cool. Going back to what I said earlier, whereas I feel like I'm a little bit of a purist at heart, and that I love the gallery. I love visiting galleries. I love like the experience of going into it, even if I'm not a collector and I'm just a viewer. I want to have that experience, and there's something that online doesn't necessarily always give us that gratification. Like it provides, it satisfies the visual need, but it, you know, it's not, you don't get that physical experience that art gives you from online. So I hope that we can continue to support the bricks and mortar side of galleries and museums, because they kind of fall into that realm too, where it's about the experience and not just about sort of the instant gratification of swiping.
It's interesting. I was speaking with an artist very recently, and you know, it sort of came up in our conversation, and he said that, you know, even though Instagram is the primary source that we consume images nowadays, we're always on our phones, we're always looking at art online. I'm sure everyone who's listening to this is an avid art consumer, but the experiences that really affect you, the art that really moves you, he's like, they're all offline. There's nothing that has moved me online in the same way that an immersive in real life experience has.
Very interesting. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for taking part in this conversation. It's been very interesting listening to all your different perspectives, and I really appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.